Joe Biden is forced out of hiding as the Taliban takes Afghanistan. Former President Trump calls on Biden to resign in disgrace. Plus, illegal border crossers are being shipped from the border into the U.S. without proper testing. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with Joe Biden because when he says he's going on vacation, he means it. Afghanistan is collapsing. Americans are in danger, and Taliban forces are taking over city after city after city. And yet, until today, being forced out of hiding, Joe Biden has not made one public appearance to address the nation or even reporters. Kamala Harris has been in hiding. In addition, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is on vacation this week as well. They are all in hiding while one of the biggest foreign policy disasters continues to unfold. And here's the story. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris avoided appearing on camera as Kabul, the capital city of Afghanistan, fell to the Taliban on Saturday and Sunday. Biden spent the weekend at the Camp David presidential retreat, going on vacation as the situation worsened in Afghanistan. Although Biden did release a written statement on Afghanistan on Saturday, he did not go on camera to reassure the American people as news broke that officials were destroying documents in the U.S. Embassy in Kabul and even taking the American flag down from the site. He has yet to speak directly to the American people on camera after Afghanistan's president, Ashraf Ghani, fled the country and after the Taliban stormed the presidential palace in Kabul with exclusive access granted to terrorist-linked Al Jazeera network. It is an absolute disaster with scores of Afghan people trying to get out of Kabul as Americans are leaving as well. And just last month, Joe Biden said this.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion. And I want to make clear what I made clear to Ghani, that we are not going to walk away and not sustain their ability to maintain that force. We are. We're going to also work to make sure we help them in terms of everything from food necessities and other things in the region. But there is not a conclusion that, in fact, they cannot defeat the Taliban.
So how wrong can one person be? That statement was made just a month ago, and despite the warnings and despite the fact that the withdrawal stipulations negotiated by the Trump administration were not being followed, Joe Biden continued on this course.
General Scott Miller, he told ABC News, the conditions are so concerning at this point that it could result in a civil war. So if Kabul falls to the Taliban, what will the United States do about it?
Look, you've said two things. One, that if it could result in a civil war, that's different than the Taliban succeeding, number one. Number two, the question of what will be done is going to implicate the entire region as well.
Biden went on to say essentially that after the Taliban takes over, then the U.S. will assess if that's a bad thing or not. Now, Americans are being told to shelter in place in Afghanistan until more forces can arrive, and Biden and Harris are silent. A senior administration official told another network that Biden would address the nation in the next few days about the crisis in Afghanistan. A member of Congress on a Foreign Affairs Committee call said, "We've heard more from the Taliban than we've heard from Biden," according to Fox News White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich. Now, what's interesting is that even members of the left-wing media are upset about what's going on. To see the complete ineptness of the Biden administration is something hard for them to watch, much less report on. But on Sunday, CNN's Jake Tapper showed his frustration with Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
I think, again, the issue here is not just the withdrawal of U.S. forces, it's how they were withdrawn. The rapidity, the hastiness, President Obama's former ambassador to Afghanistan, Ryan Crocker, he called the way this was done, quote, a handover to the Taliban, and, quote, we have hung them out to dry about the Afghan people. Crocker continued, quote, I'm left with some grave questions in my mind about Biden's ability to lead our nation as commander-in-chief. To have read this so wrong, or even worse, to have understood what was likely to happen and not care, unquote.
Of course, Blinken had no answer for the question. Blinken actually made it sound like the administration was prepared for this, when we all know they were not. Here's more from Tapper.
The idea that President Biden ordered 2,500 service members out and now is sending up to 5,000 service members back in, does that not on its face show that the exit was ineptly planned? And again, look, you told me a few months ago on this program that you thought it was entirely likely that the Taliban would be taking over the country. But President Biden, just last month, quote, the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. He was wrong.
Unreal. Folks, this is a complete disaster. The Secretary of State says one thing, Joe Biden says another. And as I mentioned, Harris has been AWOL, Jen Psaki is on vacation, and Joe Biden was finally forced to make a statement after massive pressure. One thing is crystal clear. They cannot handle the job. Now, let's talk about former President Trump. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, regardless of platform, just search out my name, hit that subscribe button, make sure notifications are turned on. That way you can follow the show and help us grow. Okay, so let's talk about former President Trump, because with all the issues facing the country and the world, and Joe Biden showing no ability to handle them, Trump is saying that Biden should just go ahead and resign. And here's the story. Former President Trump on Sunday called on President Joe Biden to resign in disgrace over the rapid collapse of the U.S.-backed Afghan government following the pullout of American troops. In the statement issued Sunday afternoon through Trump's Save America PAC, the former president also pointed to multiple other issues he has with the Democrat, whose legitimacy to hold the office he still questions. It is time for Joe Biden to resign in disgrace for what he has allowed to happen to Afghanistan, along with the tremendous surge in COVID, the border catastrophe, the destruction of energy independence, and our crippled economy, Trump said in the short statement. Trump hit on a number of issues in that statement, and the fact is, he's right. From COVID to the border to energy to foreign policy, Joe Biden has demonstrated an inability to lead. In a separate statement, Trump hit Biden again on Afghanistan and the fact that the Biden team did not follow the agreement that was negotiated. He ran out of Afghanistan instead of following the plan our administration left for him, a plan that protected our people and our property and ensured the Taliban would never dream of taking our embassy or providing a base for new attacks against America. The Taliban no longer has fear or respect for America or America's power. What a disgrace it will be when the Taliban raises their flag over America's embassy in Kabul. This is complete failure through weakness, incompetence, and total strategic incoherence. What a difference an administration makes. As Kenneth Timmerman points out in a great article in the New York Post, Trump dealt with the Taliban from a position of strength, basically bombing them to the negotiating table. Following the deal, the Taliban tried to get aggressive once. And then they faced massive airstrikes. Since then, not one service member has died in combat in Afghanistan. As the column points out, Trump maintained U.S. fighter jets and drones at Bagram Air Base. Biden ordered the midnight evacuation of that Air Force base on July 5th without even notifying the Afghan military. So, to all those Republicans who decide to vote for Joe Biden, think about what's going on with inflation, with the border, with energy prices, national security, and much more. Isn't real leadership worth a few mean tweets? All right, so next, let's talk about the border crisis because it keeps getting worse, and the Biden-Harris administration is doing nothing about it. Cities like Laredo, Texas are so inundated that officials are shipping illegal border crossers off to other cities without performing the proper health and safety checks. And here's the story. The city of Laredo this week began busing migrant families to Austin, Dallas, and Houston, bypassing the nonprofits that were providing testing, quarantine, vaccines, and humanitarian aid amid a resurgence of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although most migrants are still being expelled to Mexico under the Title 42 public health law, the U.S. Border Patrol is processing some migrant families and releasing those who may qualify for immigration relief in the U.S. In Laredo, the city government is placing released migrants on the buses. So one thing to keep in mind when you see reports like this, or you hear statements from Jen Psaki when they say that most of the illegals are still being expelled by Title 42, they don't mention that they are limiting that statement to just individuals. Only about 12% of families have been expelled by Title 42. They are being sent from the border to the interior of the United States. And here's more. Austin officials confirmed that 150 migrants were bused to the city's bus terminal. The Dallas Morning News reported at least 3 buses carrying mostly Central American families have arrived in the past week from Laredo, plus a 4th bus from Del Rio filled with migrant families from Haiti and Cuba. Laredo officials, contending with a surge in COVID-19 hospitalizations, claimed in a July court filing that the city's nonprofit shelters are facing significant strain and local hospitals couldn't risk taking on sick migrants. This is just another reason why former President Trump's policies were so much better than what we see now. Remain in Mexico, no catch and release. That's what we had. Now we are releasing COVID-positive illegal aliens into the country and asking them to return later for their court appearance. What a mess. All right, next let's talk about the Supreme Court and the case over New York's eviction moratorium, because we actually have some good news to report. Good news for the landlords and good news for the Constitution. It's always bothered me that the left always tries to portray business owners as some kind of inanimate evil objects. You have the workers and you have the evil corporation. No, the corporation is run by people too. You have the renters and you have the evil landlords. No, the landlords are people too. People who are private property owners who also have bills to pay just like the renters do. To say that people can just live on their land for free, which is what AOC and others say, is unconstitutional and wrong. And here's the story. The Supreme Court blocked part of New York State's COVID-19 related eviction moratorium at the behest of a group of landlords who say they cannot sustain its fiscal toll. In a brief statement, the High Court said the moratorium appeared to deprive the landlords of their property without due process. The court statement was unsigned and did not include a vote count, as is typical of such matters, but Justices Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan noted their dissent. So this is great news, although the court should be more consistent with these rulings. Earlier, the court voted 5-4 to let the CDC's eviction moratorium stand. Brett Kavanaugh said he would have ruled against it, but it was about to run out anyway. And if they do it again, he'll rule against that one. That's not a sound constitutional basis at all, but I'm certainly happy for the New York ruling. And here's more. The Supreme Court's decision will not necessarily result in the eviction of their tenants. It would merely allow them to make a case for eviction to a housing court, which may or may not succeed. Absent that opportunity, lawyers for the landlords argued the moratorium deprives them of their property without due process, a violation of the Constitution. Under the New York scheme, a tenant's declaration of COVID-related hardships on a state form delayed eviction proceedings until the moratorium expires. The owner's hands are completely tied. Tenants are not required to submit any proof of their claimed hardships, and applicants and other property owners are given no opportunity to present contrary evidence, the application reads. As the story notes, the CDC has issued a new moratorium, and New York has other COVID laws in place that hinder the rights of landlords. So there is still a lot of work to do, but this ruling was a step in the right direction. Okay, friends, that's our show for today, but don't forget, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, regardless of platform, just search out my name, hit that subscribe button, make sure notifications are turned on. That way you can follow the show and help us grow. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. Our next show is going to be Wednesday, Same time on my channel, same usual time on Right Side Broadcasting. Until then, I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.